Yes. So we're on. Today is Tuesday, the 13th of October, day 2 of EDU322, term 4, 2020. Okay. Now, this is a question for you present and for those who will be watching later. I hope you all noticed that I put a whole bunch of posts up yesterday on the Moodle pages and did a fair bit of work, certainly on the bachelor version. So I would really, what I'm trying to say is I found that doing that yesterday, updating things and writing posts, was my way of saying, hey, I'm here. Please make sure that you have a really clear eye on your emails for EDU522322. Whenever you see anything with that code on, make sure you read it. Okay. So I hope that's fine. And Tamara, you've caught up with everything about 322. Yes.
Yes, I looked at everything before we'd even jumped on yesterday.
Okay.
So
Good.
I saw the 2 posts yesterday and
good. That is excellent. Thank you. All right then. Oh, Eliza from Brisbane, who sadly missed out on yesterday because of the time difference. You're very welcome. I've done that, been there. All is forgiven. I hope you have a lovely day today, Eliza. So we've got Tamara. Where does Tamara live?
Sydney.
Whereabouts?
Western suburbs.
Western suburbs.
So Erskine Park.
Erskine Park. And Nitty, where are you?
I'm living Parramatta, just near to the college.
Yeah, and wouldn't it be great if we could meet? So annoying.
Yeah.
And Eliza, oh, you've disappeared, but you're in Brisbane. Yeah, she's back. Okay, so what I would like to do now is launch on the Willard and Frazee PowerPoints, and you'll find those in the Moodle section called Resources and Readings. And just a little way down there, inset to the right. Willard and Frazee 2005, Renovation of the Heart, Part 1, 13 slides. And then hopefully we'll get to Part 2 tomorrow, Part 2, 21 slides. So now you might be asking me, but so I'll save you from the trouble. What are we doing this for? Because the essays or the assignments we talked about yesterday weren't particularly about the heart. Okay, so let me try and unpack why. These 2 people, Willard and Frazee, basically wrote this sort of workbook, which I've turned into PowerPoints for my purposes through this course. The reason why I'm doing it is so that it's a bit like, how shall I say, therapy. When you might book into a healing institution for a week or a fortnight or something, or a weight loss clinic or something. It's a way of, my prayer is that it's a way of engaging your inner self, not just this bit. This bit is fine on what you do with most of your subjects, but 322, 522 is very much more about your motives and the real you, and therefore I make no apology. I want to dig into your heart a bit and see what's going on in there. And some of you, I find, are a little unused to this because it's an area of their life they've closed off. And don't go there, it's too painful. Some may be very used to it and it just comes natural. So, you know, everyone will find themselves at a different point on the spectrum. But I trust all of you will loosen up and be able to express what's in your heart better as a result of what we do. A phrase comes to mind. Often it's said that blokes find it hard to really explain how they feel. I mean, you must have heard that. I think it's a bit unfair to put blokes in such a category and say, as a general rule, they find it hard to express their feelings, and girls can. Well, yeah. Page
It's more
2.
socially acceptable.
Thank you. That is so unfortunately true. So unfortunately true. It's these stereotypes that just bind us up. Now, there's a little clip, and can I see a show of hands or say something if you know the movie The Matrix? I see a nod, yes. Nitty, no? Oh, well, there's a bit of homework.
You're missing out, Nitty.
You need to get into The Matrix. It's full of many, many layers. Many, many layers. Very confusing.
It's one of Keanu Reeves' best movies.
Is that right?
Okay. I'll see today. Then I'll see if I can watch today.
Okay, but this
Do
is
you have Stan?
No.
Oh,
Okay.
because I was going to say, if you have Stan, it's on Stan.
Okay. Is it on Netflix as well?
Not sure. I haven't looked, but you can have a look.
I'll try.
So this little clip here is, I for just a bit of fun, I've just used it to really ask you, do you know the difference between the path you're called to walk on and actually walking on it? It's a bit hard for me to explain, but what I'm trying to say is it's all very well you knowing that, yes, you're going to walk out on this road called teaching, but it's another thing to actually do it. And I would like to think that this course bridges that gap between the theory and the practice. And page 3, this fella here, Dietrich Bonoffer. Anybody familiar with Dietrich Bonhoeffer? I see one nod and not two. German.
The name sounds familiar.
German theologian, lived through World War II. So have a read of a bit of his story there. I particularly like referring to him because he basically found himself in such awkward situations. For example, does he flee Germany for his own safety, or does he stay in Germany and end up being a part of a plot to assassinate Hitler and therefore risk so much? And I find that tussle between doing what's right for himself and his family and doing what's right for a nation, and everybody's got to know what they've got to do at any one given time, and nobody can tell you. So I find his life quite challenging, very challenging, inspiring. How many of you know Keith Green? Do I see a nod? Yeah, no. I see no. I see a thumb down. Oh man. All right. This is homework, please, as well as doing seeing the Matrix Nitty. You've got to find out about Keith Green, a 60s, 70s Christian songwriter who went up in a plane with one or two of his children in a little plane, and very young in their family's life, and the plane crashed and he died with his child, and his wife Melody is still alive, and she wrote an amazing book called No Compromise. And basically you could imagine that she, being widowed really on in their marriage, could easily have gone bitter and hard and said, why me, God? But she didn't. She kept an amazing spirit. So I commend Keith Green to you as well as an inspirational guy who basically determined to let his life count for God, and everything else didn't matter. Anyway, I'm going to shush for a minute. Yesterday I asked you some questions, thinking particularly about injustice, exploitation of women, racial discrimination, employment discrimination, controlling personalities. How do you cope with those? And the question of abortion. Would you, any of you, not putting any of you on the spot, would any of you like to talk to any one of those? How do you respond to injustice in your world, in your community, on your planet? And don't forget to unmute.
I guess I'll go first.
Go for it.
I tend to get really heated and really passionate if it's about something that I think is really unfair. So especially if I see it going on in front of me, I tend to get really passionate and I start lecturing the person who's doing it. So say, for example, I was in a classroom, because this tends to happen in classrooms with racial discrimination, where there's a lovely little meme where it's the mum's tongue going out through her kid's mouth and the kid's bullying another kid. I found that tends to happen a lot in the classroom, especially in regards to racial discrimination when you're a casual teacher. And each time it happens, I pull them up on it and I tend to lecture them a little bit, in the sense of like, how are they different from you? Like, I raise the question of, why have you said that? Why do you think that? How are they different? And most of the time they can't answer it. They can't answer why they're picking on this child, on this classmate of theirs, because they just don't know. They're just doing it because that's what they're raised with. And I've gone, well, if you don't know the difference, if there's no difference between you and this person, why are you picking on them?
Yeah.
Because essentially, again, when you're dealing with kids, it's not the same as like racial discrimination in a workplace. I do know that. I'm not naive. But I feel like being primary school teachers, we have to nip it in the bud pretty much then and there. Like, as soon as we see it, we need to raise these questions with them, where it's, okay, that might be what it's like at home, but in the classroom, I'm not okay with that.
Tamara, do you get the impression that the the normal teacher before you is turning a blind eye to that or excusing it away?
In a couple of scenarios, but most of the time, no, because other kids will come up to me after that child's gotten in trouble. And it's not like I pull the child aside to do these discussions. It's done in like where the whole class can hear, because they're like the child themselves most of the time are being loud about it. So I will purposefully do it in front of the class on the off chance that another child is thinking about doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And I'll have another child come up to me most of the time and go, they always do this when there's casual teachers on. They don't do it with our normal teacher, but they always do it when the casual teachers are on. And I'm like, that's fine, but I'm not putting up with it.
Right.
And I'll leave a note for the normal teacher going, so-and-so, there was an incident with so-and-so, this is what happened, this is how I addressed it. Because odds are, most of the time when the teacher comes back, they're going to have a discussion with the child again anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And
So,
they might just want to ring the parents and say, look, this is what's happened. This has been a constant thing. And because a lot of schools now are using this system called Central, where basically they log all these issues that the child is having, so it makes it easier. I don't have access to Central because obviously I'm a casual teacher. So it also provides the teacher, so they know, okay, well, if this hasn't been an ongoing issue, they can log it on Central going, well, on this date, this happened. And if it has been an ongoing issue, they can just add it into Central and go, well, this is obviously something that requires a bit more effort, or what's working, what we've tried isn't working, let's try something else, or...
Okay, thank you. Last question for you, Tamara, on that. Do you feel that your intervention is effecting change? Or is it simply a dripping tap that is being, in the long term, ignored?
Some kids, I feel it is, because they're not thinking about, like, especially the kids where they're just doing it because mum and dad do it, so they think it's okay. Those sort of kids, I feel, the ones that haven't really thought it through, when I'm asking these questions, they're actually, you can see it, like a light flickering on in their head going, oh, so they're actually not that different from me. I don't like being bullied. I'm bullying this person. Like, that's the way that they see it. I don't say that they're bullying them, but that's the way they see it.
Yeah.
Whilst the ones that are, I think the ones where it's a bit more ingrained in their home life, it's a lot harder to reach them. Like, if I was their everyday teacher, I would give them an activity to do, as opposed to just sitting there and asking them questions. Because I actually bought, I don't know if you've heard of the artist A.J. Jelani or Jelani. He's an Australian author.
No. Do you know how to spell that?
Juliani.
Yeah.
He had this Kickstarter that I've backed, and it's basically an empathy workbook for teachers. So that should be, I'm due to get that soon. And then after all the backers have received their stuff, it's going to go worldwide.
Can you put a link in the news forum in this subject?
Yes, I can. So I've got it for stage 2 and stage 3s. It's basically a teacher empathy workbook.
Mm.
And I would flick through and I'd find something from that to assign to the children that required that extra bit of a push to understand that, well, everyone's different, everyone's the same as well, in the sense that no one likes to be picked on, and it's not fair to be picking on someone just because they're different from you.
Good. What about Nitty, Christine, and Eliza? Exploitation of women, employment discrimination. How do you cope with a controlling personality, and abortion? Anybody? Nitty.
Yeah. Dr. Jim, I would like to talk about the controlling personality, because initially, if I tell you about my experience, when I was in my childhood, I was an introvert sort of a person. I never used to be vocal about injustice or anything happening around me. So I used to keep it within my heart rather than discussing it with anybody else. But I was quite attentive of what all was happening around me. But gradually, with the experience, I learned, until and unless a person is vocal about what all injustice is happening around them, wouldn't make any difference in anybody's life. So, but still, I'm not much vocal about it. But I always try to discuss it with the person individually rather than having a group discussion. If something is happening to for example, so if I feel some injustice is happening to me, rather than going much vocal and talking to everybody about it, I rather prefer going to the person individually and then have one-on-one discussion with him.
Yeah.
And I believe controlling personality to much extent depends on your motivation or how you want to change within yourself. I have learned a lot in my life. I have changed myself many times. I was a totally different person initially, but I kept on working on my personality, what all thing required changes in my personality, and I kept on working on it. And I think motivation and perseverance are the thing I believe have worked on me. But still, I won't say that I'm not too open about all these things. I don't know the reason why, but I can feel the injustice happening. I can discuss it with that particular person, but I can't like I can't have a shout out about it. It's maybe due to the person I am, or I don't know the reason, but it is what is there with me.
Well, Nitty, thank you for your honesty. I think you're obviously on a journey, and it's a fascinating one. I would really encourage you to explore that question as to why, because I think that might be a really crucial thing for your assignments, actually, to look at the why you've struggled and why you've changed. So it's not just a negative, but there's a huge positive. As I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about the classroom situation where motivation is such a crucial thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're not operating a machine, which has no humanity. It's got no living parts. Kids are real, and I would argue, if we don't allow the empathy button to get pressed, certainly I think teaching isn't for you. You have to be vulnerable so you can connect with people. But on the other hand, if you're too vulnerable, then you could easily be destroyed, and you end up in a heap and no good to anybody. So to me, it's a big challenge as to how much to open up to a class, how much to be passionate about injustice, which is what we're talking about now, or how much to just let it go. It's not my business. This doesn't bother me. I'm just here to do a job. I mean, that would be awful. I mean, I think if you had that attitude, you would go home so unfulfilled at the end of the day. But I would love to think that you can go home and feel you've had your part in saving one little bit of injustice. Thank you, Nitty. Christine, Eliza, would you like to say anything about your view on injustice and how you respond to it? You're muted, Christine. There. You have to unmute yourself, which means probably looking at the screen, which is probably what you shouldn't do. We still can't hear you. Can I unmute you?
I've got it. I've got it.
Got it. Yeah.
I'm not actually driving at the moment. I've actually parked the car.
Okay.
So it's a little bit more legal. The issue of injustice is one that I've worked with for a while now, and I guess for me, there's been a significant part of my life that really has been less about focusing on the injustice, other than by choosing to intentionally be an expression of justice. So the way I've addressed that is, like, in the 1980s, I spent several years teaching people who were excluded from education, particularly children and families, teaching in mainland China. And there were families and kids that were excluded from education because of their participation in the less than official church. So when I became aware of that, I spent some time praying and in retreat, and then felt that God was okay with the idea, and in fact even felt led to take my skills, and was sponsored by the school that I was teaching at then to actually go and go to China and teach, sort of that prep grade 3 context within a central Chinese school, a central Chinatown, a village there, so I could work in that school. End result, I was arrested and spent 3 months incarcerated for anti-communist activities supporting the underground church. So I left that because it was kind of like time to move on. And in the 2000s, I spent a whole bunch of time teaching in the offshore refugee and asylum seeker camps, because again, if I can be an expression of justice as opposed to, that's kind of my challenge to that which is unjust or unjust. It's kind of like, okay, pick up and move and go do something. So I guess for me, it's been about when I see things that are not right, it's really about asking God if he would have me do something in that situation, do it to the best of my abilities, be that expression of justice in a community, and then when no longer appropriate, it is okay to shake the dust off your feet and move on. That's kind of my thing.
Thank you, Christine.
It's weird.
Eliza, follow that.
Yeah, thanks for that. Oh wow, yeah. I think I feel and get very passionate about lots of injustice issues. But I think I guess I feel very like baby and unexpanded in my few years in terms of actually like having chances to deal with that in real life. Yeah, I feel like I probably get really passionate about things like from a distance in a big concept, world-changing kind of way, but then actually seeing that occur in like day-to-day situations and knowing what to do is something I'm yet to grow in, probably.
Yeah, thank you. You see, listening to you, Eliza, I'm thinking about my own walk, my own life. Yeah, I'll tell you a wee little story. In my first teaching job in England in the 1970s, I got married in 76 and lived with my wife in a flat in a boarding school for 2 years. Then we moved out into the real world and lived there in our own home. Now, this school had been going for 400 years, and most of the staff were living in the school, either married or single. They had accommodation paid for by the school. It was an incredibly privileged situation. But here was I moving out in my late 20s and living in the community, and there was probably 8 out of 40 staff who lived out. And those people who lived out, I think they got about £100 a year living out allowance. And that living out allowance had been in place for decades and not moved with inflation at all. So if you look at it this way, I was a member of staff being paid an extra £100 a year to live out in the community, as in pay my mortgage. It was as if it was a deduction of what the people in the school were being paid, because their salary included accommodation and food. It was an absolute gift. So the differential was unjust. So I don't know, but I found myself going to the headmaster as a 2 or 3 years out teacher and saying to him, getting all the data together, it seems as if this living out allowance hasn't moved in decades. What do you think we should do about this? So, long story short, yes, the living out allowance was changed. Probably a nought was added to that. I can't remember what the figures were now. But I was very nervous and I was aware that I was becoming political by standing up for injustice. And there were these other 7 teachers who hadn't raised the question, and they were just happy to be living where they were and living with the injustice. Now, why didn't any of them raise the question? Why hadn't it been raised for decades? It seemed really strange to me. So that was the first time I realized I was a bit passionate about injustice. And I think it's been part of my fabric. I wouldn't claim anything like Chris's experience, where she's intentionally gone to places to be an instrument of justice. But I would argue you could all look at your philosophy of education and just examine where does the justice dial fit in there. How important is it? And I would argue that within the realm of all the demands on a teacher, massive demands on a teacher, and the pressures on a teacher, and the expectations of yourself on the teacher, please don't let justice go, because arguably, you know, we are an army of people who are standing up for right. And I don't mean by that, you know, the cranky protesters who arguably are in for chaos rather than in for righteousness. I would just love to think that we as a community of teachers can have some part to play in bringing about greater equity and greater fulfillment to the people in our care. Chris?
If I might just share one little incident that links very closely with schools, and in regard to when I was incarcerated in China, it was actually a group of grade 3 kids that I had previously taught when they were kindergarten kids in New South Wales. So when they'd initially come to school, I taught those kids, and there were a couple of little kids the school had promised to pray for me while I was away teaching, and these couple of grade 3 kids on a particular day stopped the class and said with their teacher and said, we have to pray for Miss Cohen. Something bad's happening. We need to pray for Miss Cohen. And the class did that, and the kids weren't satisfied. The kids said, no, we have to get the school to pray. And in fact, when I was able to be when I actually was repatriated back to Australia, the school had prayed on that particular day, and that was the day that I was released from incarceration. And very much, I believe that it was the unction of the Holy Spirit that directed those kids and 2 grade 3 kids stirring a school. It's a little country school, a little country Christian community school of less than 100 kids. But I put my freedom to an act of God that was enhanced by the prayers of grade 3. So I think the opportunity for me to be an expression of justice has, and because that has been a fundamental in my view of education and it's a core value for me. And it's a core value for me not to protest, but to act. And so as a core value, I believe that I had spent a number of years working with those kids to help them see that we individually can make a big difference. And in making a difference, whether that's through prayer or participation in a different community, going out of our comfort zone to participate in other communities, then good things happen for me and for others.
No. Thank you, Chris. Okay, anything else on page 3 anybody wants to raise or comment? Okay. Page 4. By the age of 40, everyone has the face they deserve. These next slides go on about reading faces. Are you a reader of faces? Are you a reader of body language? I find it fascinating. Personally, I can't remember being bored. If I happen to be in a cafe on my own, I will be as amused as anything to investigate the lives of other people by watching. And there are some very expressive faces there. I can't now name them all, but can anybody name number 5 in the middle at the bottom? No?
I'd say
Probably not.
enthusiasm.
Sorry?
I'd say enthusiasm.
Yeah. Absolutely. Without a doubt. Do you know who he is?
No.
Okay. Tony Blair, one-time Prime Minister of England. This fella, number 4 on the bottom left, white hair. Anybody know him? Chris, keep your eye on the road. Jimmy Carter, one-time president of USA. Sorry, Chris?
Excuse me, Jim. Where are these pictures that I'm looking at? Because all I can see is you guys at the minute.
Oh, maybe because you're on the phone, but they'll be on the recording.
Okay, cheers.
Yeah, I'm going through the first PowerPoint of Willard and Frazee, and I'm on page 5.
Yeah, I don't actually have the skills to be able to multiply.
No.
Put anything else on the screen. Cheers.
Don't worry. I've got a lot of time for. He looks a bit glum there, Jimmy Carter, but I'm really impressed with him because since leaving office, he's ended up heading up something for humanity. He basically builds, organizes to build homes for the less well-off around the world. An amazing, very, very quiet but effective ministry for justice. So, anti-bullying. Now, we've Tamara, you spoke up about that. When a bystander actually does object, it has been reported that 57% of occasions of the bullying actually stops. I love that statistic. When the bystander actually objects, it's been reported that 57% of the occasions of bullying can actually stop. Now, thinking of your schooling situations, I would argue that if there's any way, much as you will be drawn to the crisis of a real bully situation, the bullied and the bullying, I would argue that as a teacher, your responsibility is so wide to the whole class who happen to see it, or if it's ongoing, witness it for many months, maybe years. Why are they not standing up? How is it that somebody who would hate to be bullied themselves doesn't stand up to a bully when it's not them being bullied? It just amazes me that the most natural human instinct is to actually not get involved when,
I think it's a fear. I think there's a couple of reasons. One is fear of the bully turning the eye to them.
Yeah.
So while that person is no longer being bullied, they then become the victim by trying to stand up and defend someone else. But I think in the other cases, it's more the kids haven't been taught how to stand up. So while they're seeing it and they're like they get the feeling that it's not okay and all the rest of it, kids tend to take stuff to the extremes. So what may have once been a joke or a prank or just playing can get out of hand very quickly, and it gets to bullying. So the kids themselves saw it back when it was a joke or back when it was harmless, and it's just progressed and progressed. So they don't know that there's a line that you can't cross.
Yeah.
So they need to be taught, okay, so this is where the line is. This isn't okay. If you see this happening, this is when you need to do something, and this is how you need to go about it. And I think it's, again, it's more a matter of, because a lot of kids, especially if it's their friend being bullied, they're not as scared to stand up for their friend and say, no, what you're doing is wrong and you need to stop it. And they're not afraid to divvy dob at all when someone's doing something wrong. So
Okay.
I think it's
Tamara,
just more about
let me,
they don't know how.
sorry to interrupt you, but I've come across a huge, in my teaching career, I've come across a huge wave of, it's wrong, it's unjust to dob. It's almost as if it's a matter of pride that you hold back from dobbing somebody in for wrongdoing. Chris?
I have been extremely familiar with that notion where it's wrong to dob. I have experienced in the last couple of years, though, a change in that mindset. Just in the last 2-3 years, it seems, it could be the last 5 years, I'm not sure, but there is now a stronger sense of it's okay to speak, it's okay to say. And I guess for me, my current teaching situation finds me in a position where I'm teaching in prisons, and I'm teaching people as an alternate to custody, a restoration justice project. And so instead of people being incarcerated here in Queensland, they do what we call a positive lifestyle program with me, or with one of the people that I've trained as a facilitator. And more so, it's like, these are the values that are really important. And as soon as people start to have a little success, they, in so much as if they see they can say something or do something as opposed to just be another loud voice, if they can do something that has a degree of success, they then have more confidence to do something again. An example, just last week, I had a girl who was in court again, yet again, and the person who was being charged ahead of her was being charged for having shaken the baby, a baby younger than 18 months. And this woman had shaken the baby to the point where it had passed out and had to be taken to hospital, and the child was taken off her. The magistrate had to debate whether or not the child was, whether the woman was going to be, what level of penalty was going to be imposed on this woman. The lady that I've been tutoring and been teaching got up in the court and said, you cannot let this lady get off scot-free. She has shaken a baby and that baby needs to be defended. And she challenged the magistrate in court. That's something you don't normally do. So I ended up having to take my lady outside and sort of say, just chill a second, okay, but we're not allowed to be the judge here. There is a magistrate. Thank you so much for standing up. Well done, you. And there was a whole bunch of people that patted this homeless lady who's been incarcerated so many times. They actually came and patted her on the back and cheered for her because she defended the defenseless child. So I think people get a go on if, in fact, they experience a degree of success and that success can be repeated. Sometimes they then have to learn what is an appropriate place and a way to express. But yeah, cheers for that particular lady.
Very good, thank you. Bullying. I will point out to you on page 6 there, you will see that every now and again there's a prayer. So it's like a chapter ending, and we've done it's if you like, it's a little bit like heart surgery. We've got to the end of the first phase of the operation. The surgeon has cut so deep and has severed so much. We'll see how we go. So I offer these prayers are straight out of the book. So I offer them to you for you to come to reflect on as you get there. The next slide, 7, talks about the Good Samaritan, and I find that story from Luke chapter 10, verse 33, obviously very challenging. It seems so unlike many other stories that Jesus told, but I'll leave that with you and let us move on because time is going. Page 8. Now, I don't want to dwell in any time length on this one, but I suspect you'll all remember Columbine High School being talked about as arguably one of the earliest mass shootings in America in a school. 2 boys went nuts and shot a lot of people. 1 teacher, 12 students killed, and the 2 murderers were dead, plus 21 were injured. I was fascinated with the debate as to why the students ended up doing that. And the fingers pointed all sorts of places other than them. Their upbringing, the company they kept, the music, the movies they watch, etc., etc., their gender. I find it fascinating what can be excused as the cause, and I think that's so unfair to point the finger away from the real people who have responsibility for something like this. But having said that, personally speaking, can I raise this question with you? The question about music and movies and computer games. Do you believe that they do influence the current generation who play them or watch them? Chris, you said yes, I think.
Yes, I think it distorts reality. It can normalize a lot of music and movies. Music, movies, and computer games can normalize something that is really abnormal, in fact, evil behavior.
So does this mean that we need to take a stand against those depraving movies and music that do, in other words, should we be holding placards, should we be petitioning our MPs to stop the spread of them? No?
Nah. Stand for what is good. Keep your eyes focused on what is good, right, pure, and holy. Stand for what is good. It is not my place, and I don't actually think it's the role of teachers to become the morality police of the world. I think it is our role to promote that which is good, positive, and holy.
There you go. Thank
See,
you for that.
As a gamer, I disagree with you, Chris. Sorry.
But I'm not trying to change. I'm not trying to change your mind. I'm just saying this is my position. My position is, you know what? If I can introduce you to a game that is phenomenal, but does not involve the massacre or murder of people or things, too cool.
Like, as a gamer, I might be coming at this from a really mature perspective, and let me know if I am. But each game is different in the way that it's presented. Like, even if it's all shooting, or if it's all like there's killing aspects to it, it's all presented differently. So say, for example, you've got a game like Fortnite, which is really cartoony, but you're running around shooting people. The aim is to be the last person standing. Whilst you then have games like Death Stranding, which is really hyper realistic, and a lot of work has really kind of gone into it, where it's single player, but it can also be multiplayer as well. And this is where the ratings really come in because of these graphics, because when programmers and that sort of stuff aren't completely oblivious to how easily children are influenced, especially in today's society now, where you've got two parents working full time to support the household. So a lot of the time the kids are playing games. They're on their Xbox, they're playing PlayStation, they're playing computer games, they're watching TV, they're doing all this stuff. So programmers are really aware that these games tend to be a sit-in babysitter. So the games that children are supposed to be playing, and I stress supposed to be playing, are not violent enough to cause them to then go out into a high school and then start shooting everybody. The problem comes in when parents are buying R-rated games for their 10-year-old to play. And I'm talking R-rated because the graphics are hyper realistic. It's got a lot of killing in it. It's got a lot of adult themes in it. It's got a lot of nudity in it. And this is stuff that the kids are getting, like the parents just, I don't know if it's just parents don't realize that games have ratings, or they're just completely ignoring the ratings. They're like, oh, all games are the same. All like they've all got shooting, they've all got this, they've all got that. They don't realize that these hyper realistic ones, children have big imaginations. So when it's hyper realistic, it's very easy for them to make the connection that this could be real life and that this could be acceptable.
Tamara, thank you for that. That's an illuminating perspective. When you started talking about games, I thought you might have included in your review, which was brilliant, I felt, particularly focusing in on the irresponsibility of some parents. I think that, and prove me wrong, that basically the makers of games are simply hooked to a formula. How can I create something that is really addictive, because that's going to improve my bottom line? This is going to sell more, therefore we need to be more and more addictive, and therefore using the hook of more and more violence. And that concerns me. Now, it's not my job at the moment. I don't feel called to mount a campaign against violent video games. But I feel that this relates to the whole question of justice and what are we doing with the generations to come. I mean, sorry, let me go on another sidetrack. My concern is in a school community where the respect is gone or is going, and therefore you new teachers, previously, if you've been starting out a career 20 years ago, you would have gone in on a platform of unquestioning respect from the children, because that's what you did. You respected a teacher. Whereas today, I would argue, because of it's not right to even raise a question against somebody, if they've got an opinion or a view or a behavior that's different from yours, oh, that's fine. Result, the respect for teachers is being eroded. And to what degree should we be taking a stand, not thumping a fist and locking people up, but how do we bring respect back to the profession of teaching? Niti.
First of all, I would, regarding this video game thing, I do go with Chris, because I think some, rather than if you talk about reviews, as Tamara said, but still kids, I believe kids are very much vulnerable to all these things. And when these all things happens in video game, it seems normal to kids, and they take it as a learning that it's quite normal to kill,
Yeah.
or to, yeah. So it changes their mindset, and I believe that they are not able to differentiate between right and wrong. It all seems right to them because it's a game, and they bring that game to real life as well. Because I can share, it's not related to that, to the video games of killing and everything, but I have seen my son playing video games, and the language they use in video games, at times he has learned that language, and he uses it at home as well. So I can realize the effect or the influence these video games have on the overall personality of the kids, and they tend to, I think, increase by the time they keep on playing more and more sorts of video games. So I being a mother, I must say that I have experienced all these things. So I can say these, I also go with Chris, that video games have a detrimental effect on personality of the kids. And
Yeah.
I think being a teacher, yes, it is our responsibility to, a major responsibility to tell students about right and wrong. And this we can, since I believe the classroom is a small world for the teacher, and I've always believed that the amount of influence a teacher have on their student is major. Because I have seen my son is much influenced, or much taken over by his teacher, rather than he never listens to me, but he always follows his teacher. So I think
Yeah.
as a teacher, it is one of the major responsibility that is on our shoulders, to
Yeah.
discuss with them, explain them, have make them realize that me it's not related to the video games I'm talking about, but still the learning lessons we should have in our lives. I just want to explain, discuss one of the experience I had. When I was in year 7 or 8, we had a teacher who used to teach us moral education, and that was an optional subject. It wasn't that subject which was related to grades. So none of the students were much worried about getting through that subject. But I've seen the pain the teacher has taken in imbibing into us the moral values. What he used to differentiate between what is right and what is wrong. And literally I can very well imagine it has made a huge impact on me. And I think I think that's a responsibility of a teacher.
Sure. Thank you very much, Niti. That there's a wealth in that. That was brilliant. Thank you. Anyone else want to raise anything on this theme?
I think one of the issues that teachers are struggling with at the moment is I know when I was a kid, teachers were teachers and parents were parents. You each had your set things that was basically expected of you. So, for example, as a parent, it was expected that your child was toilet trained, could dress themselves before they came to school.
Yeah.
So teachers didn't have to take them to the toilet. They didn't have to toilet train the child, so to speak. Whilst nowadays it's more like teachers have to, like schools now have to send home notes to say when your child, when your child comes to school, it is expected that your child is toilet trained, that your child can dress themselves, that your child can do this, your child can do that. Because obviously kids are kids and they're going to have accidents. That is understandable, especially when they're early stage one. It's going to happen. Nothing you can really do about it. But when teachers are also expected to now toilet train kids as well, it's getting to the point where now parents aren't doing their role and teachers are expected to take more on where realistically they shouldn't be, because teachers are already stuck between a rock and a hard place in the sense that you already have all these expectations on you from the parents, from the government, from the school, from the kids, and also from yourself. So you have a set of expectations where you're like, okay, so this is what I want these kids to be like at the end of the year. This is what I want them to know. This is, how I expect them to behave in class. This is how I expect myself to behave in class. And obviously you're going to have off days where sometimes you don't necessarily meet your expectations. Like, so for example, if you've got a kid in your class that reacts really badly to loud noises, which is not at all uncommon in today's society. I've been in multiple schools where that is actually a thing. You can't raise your voice to get the attention of the kids.
Yeah.
Or if someone's doing something really, really wrong, where normally your automatic reaction is to scold them the way that a parent would scold their child, which naturally you're going to get loud about, you can't do that. So if you have one of those children in your class, one of your expectations on yourself is that you don't raise your voice. But if you're having a particularly bad day, I can guarantee it's going to happen. So you've automatically got all these expectations on you, and now all of a sudden you're expected to take a parenting role for these kids as well. Like, I understand that for about half the kids in your class, these kids are seeing you more than they're seeing their parents in today's society. It is what it is. But having said that, it doesn't mean you then have to become the parent.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of the bad behavior is stemming from, because parents don't have time for their kids anymore. They don't. It's now up to the teacher to go to all of a sudden teach all these things that normally would be taught at home, where before, teachers helped kids to know the difference between right and wrong, but it was more of a supporting role. Something that while they were learning to socialize, they had to learn, okay, so this is okay, this isn't. Whilst before parents would automatically do that. I don't know.
I think that what you're describing is a very telling situation, and I would contrast it with what Niti shared about the teacher who taught her class moral values. I find it fascinating where education is moving to. What also comes to mind, Tamara, is that I would argue there's a very, very clear role for the teacher to teach the parents. And if you go into many schools, there's a whole language and a whole program, if you like, of PD for the parents.
Yes.
And it's so important to see that as your role. And in fact, if you put more and more effort into that, you get more and more success out of your kids in the classroom. Chris?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think particularly when I was teaching in New Guinea and places like that, running some afternoon sessions every
Yeah.
week, you know, with mums, so that they get some better literacy skills, and kind of mentoring mums around breastfeeding and weaning, and mentoring mums around, particularly, you know, with K3 students, just kind of working with them so that in fact they are better able to support their kids, but also able to
Yeah.
more independent themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, I figured working with the families
Yeah.
was a really cool thing to do, and I loved it. It was fun.
One of the things that comes to mind, Chris, is the one-stop shop idea,
Yep.
where the school is the community. Literally, in decades past, it would have been the church, but
Yes.
arguably now it's the school. And wouldn't
Yep.
it be fantastic if that was the place where you went to for triage, if you like? Now, do I need a counselor? Do I need a medic? Do I need an educationist? Do I need this? Do I need that? And that's the place where all those referrals can take place. I think it's absolutely beautiful when a community works like that.
In New Guinea, it was the mango tree, and the mango tree was the school, and the mango tree was also where people came to resolve differences. I think it's a slightly scriptural thing, but they used to call it the gate, the town gate. But we called it the mango tree because there was also food on tap then. But yeah, that's where the local nurse would come to, and all of these things happened in the context of that. These are very small villages. These are small town locations. This is not the the graded, structured school environment that has amazing buildings and phenomenal windows, edifices. But that's the kind of place that I love, and that's the kind of place where I can be me.
That's a lovely picture. The town gate. I just briefly would like to share a little story. One of my memories, which is just, it's incredible how this memory's come back, and I haven't thought about it for years and years and years. I was principal in Wollongong for a few years in a Christian school. And one of my most telling memories was sitting in my office with a father and his son, and it basically being the mediator between the two of them. It was nothing really to do with a school incident, but a breakdown that had happened in the family, and they both agreed to meet in my office. Now, boy, that was so emotionally demanding, and it is still obviously on me now. But isn't it fantastic that that can happen in a school? Yeah. And if we can bring justice to broken relationships, that would be so wonderful. So wonderful. Alfax said, thank you for coming in. I haven't had a chance to look at the people putting things in the chat, but I think they might well be. I'm not sure. No, they're probably, something's happening. There's 4 up there. Does that mean 4 people are here? Don't know. Now, moving on, I'm going to try and pull this to a close. This is Mr. Dallas Willard with his model. And I put this to you not out of a, you have to agree with it. I am a bit ambivalent about it. It's his model for how each of us are. We have a spirit, heart, and will right in the core of us. The next layer of the onion out is our thoughts and feelings. The next layer is the body. The next layer is our social connections. And finally, encompassing the whole is the soul. Now, I don't know about that. That's his model. I'll leave that with you for reflection. But what I would say about it, though, is I think it's very important to bear in mind that we are not just a body. And I think in many school communities, kids will simply, because of the pervading culture, simply see themselves as creatures, and therefore the body, and therefore the body has needs for food, clothing, protection, enjoyment, fulfillment, etc. They don't differentiate between the different parts of them. So I'd be very interested to encourage you to think about praying for your children's spirit, for your children's social skills, for them to manage their feelings and not be managed by their feelings, etc., etc. I find it fascinating to view kids in those different layers, whichever way around you want to look at them. Page 10, 11, and that's the end of a chapter. Think of someone you know feels discouraged or rejected. Call them or email them with some encouragement. How many of you do that on a random basis? I see a nod. Maybe Eliza? Or Tamara? Al-Faxand. We can see your name, but we can't see you. But can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Ah, welcome. Do you send random emails or random phone calls to people that you think might be having a hard time, and just out of the blue, do you do that sort of thing?
Not always, but sometimes I do that.
You've done that, okay?
Yes.
That's fantastic. I think I would encourage you to, if you like, metaphorically put up your aerial, your antenna, and ask God, is there somebody that you'd like me to reconnect with? Is there somebody I could have a part to play in encouraging that I perhaps haven't been in touch with for many, many months or years? I think it's quite a therapeutic thing to do for yourself as well, because it basically means you're no longer focusing on your needs, but you're focusing on the needs of others, and you're allowing God to intervene there and pop something or someone into your mind to do. And just as the kids, that the kindy kids that Chris was talking about, were prompted to pray for her, wow, that might be a trigger that unlocks a situation that you would have no clue about. But if you just, I've tried to educate myself to not let that thought go out as quickly as it came into my head. It may have been just a, oh, I haven't thought about them for years. Well, I wonder how they're doing. Well,
Yeah.
Maybe just do something on that moment before you forget, if you possibly can. I think it's a really good thing for your soul, for your walk, to be thinking of the needs of others rather than yourself. I'll just mention on that point there's a student who's trying to work out a research project for Action Research in Res 502, and she wrote, I think I've got the phrase right, inferiority syndrome. Anyone heard that phrase, inferiority syndrome? And she talks about it in terms of it being a thing. So where a new teacher's coming into a school community and they feel so inferior, it actually has a negative spiral. Rather than reaching out to help through a mentor or or friend, you actually feel worse about yourself and you go down in a spiral. And I'd never come across this phrase, inferiority syndrome, but apparently it's a thing. So you have to look out for that. Going into a new school community where you're the newbie, you're the stranger, you know, it's daunting. It really is. The pressures are going to be on you, and you'll be trying to remember everybody's names, trying to remember what you're supposed to do in this situation and that situation. It's hard, and particularly if you're like Tamara doing casual teaching, where you've almost got to carry your whole life in your bag and be new and fresh every time you meet a new class. It's a new day. Okay. I think I'm going to call this a wrap. And, yeah. If you look at page 13, I rather like that picture of a house. I don't know whether you can see it on this scale, but it's certainly got no windows. It's got window frames. It certainly has been a long time since it's seen any paint. It would have been a really spectacular house before it was overgrown and uncared for. So what about that picture of your heart? I'm not saying your heart looks like that, but this whole exercise through the Willard and Frazee book is asking you to have a look at the condition of your heart. Are there some walls missing? Are there some paint missing? How about some window frames? How about a door? How about some life inside the house? So take a temperature check of your heart and see how you're going. Any questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much for the journey today. I think we'll call that a day, and we'll see you, I hope, tomorrow, and maybe some others. Oh, and don't forget, we will be having more Zooms after this week in lead up to the assignments, but make sure you've got any lingering questions about the assignments to throw them at me tomorrow. Okay. See you then.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.